The sound was a tear in the fabric of the world, a high-frequency electronic shriek that flooded the Combat Information Center of the USS Bunker Hill. It was May 1945, and the ship was stationed in Demon's Lair, the patch of churning, wind-blasted ocean off the coast of Okinawa. In the CIC, a steel-plated box buried deep in the carrier's armored hull. The air was a foul mix of stale sweat, ozone, and fear. The radar operators, young men with old eyes, stared at their scopes. The screens, designed to be their window into the sky, were now just waterfalls of blinding, chaotic white. The Moguls, Japanese jammers on the island, were at full power, and they were winning. This noise wasn't just interference, it was a tactical weapon, a curtain of electronic energy precisely calibrated to smother the American S-band radar frequencies. Behind this curtain, the Kamikaze were lining up. They didn't need to see, they just needed the Americans to be blind. In the first days of May, the tactic had been brutally effective. The picket line of destroyers was being decimated. Lookouts, perched in sky talker chairs with nothing but binoculars and a telephone line, were screaming, "Vampire!" seconds before the impact. The fleet's technological shield was broken. But in the dim, red-lit gloom of the Bunker Hill's CIC, a handful of operators, beaten, exhausted, and furious, were about to stop listening to their training and start listening to the enemy. Before we continue the story of the noise hunters, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me where you're listening from. Which city? Which state? I'm curious to know who's brave enough to discover what happened when the static finally cleared. The static was a physical weight. It pressed in on Corporal Frank Rizzo, vibrating in his teeth, hissing in his headset like a nest of snakes. He'd been on watch for 10 hours, his eyes burning from the phosphorus glow of the plan position indicator scope. The PPI was supposed to show a 360-degree map of the sky. Now, it was a swirling, unreadable blizzard. "Nothing, sir," Rizzo reported to the air controller, his voice flat. "Just snow. Solid wall of it from bearing 240 to 300. They've got us blanketed." Seaman Harris, a 19-year-old plotter from Ohio, nervously updated the plexiglass tactical board, marking the blind sector with a red grease pencil. He'd only been on the ship for 2 months. He'd never seen the CIC this helpless. Lieutenant Sam Kaplan, the ship's radar maintenance officer, leaned over Rizzo's shoulder. Kaplan was MIT, a man who believed in physics, equations, and the absolute power of the magnetron. This noise, it was an insult to his science. He tweaked the gain dial on the SC2 console. The snow just got brighter, the hiss in Rizzo's ears climbing to a piercing shriek. "They're on again," Kaplan said, his voice tight with frustration. "Same frequency band, but they're sweeping it. They're not just parking on one channel. They're scrubbing back and forth to catch any frequency we hop to." He was angry. This was crude. This was a sledgehammer to his intricate watch. And it was working. The Bunker Hill itself was a wounded giant. Weeks earlier, on May 11th, 2 kamikazes had ripped her open, turning her flight deck into an inferno. She'd been patched up at sea, a floating scar, kept on the line by pure grit. Her air wing was gone, but her radar, the eyes of the fleet, was the most powerful in Task Force 58. She was now a dedicated radar command ship, and she was blind. The tactical speaker crackled, the voice of the sky talker from the mast almost unintelligible with panic. "Vampire, vampire, 2 bandits bearing 270. Low, they're on the deck. No, 3 bandits." Rizzo flinched. The lookout had spotted them inside the destroyer screen. The ship's 5-inch guns erupted with a deafening, gut-punching whump, whump, whump that rattled the coffee mugs in the CIC. The steel deck vibrated, a deep, resonant hum of violence. Then, the tactical net, the channel connecting the fleet, screamed, "Mayday! Mayday! This is Watchman! We are hit! We are hit! Fire in the aft magazine! We are going down!" A garbled shout. Then the sound of an open, hissing carrier wave. The destroyer, loose, was gone. Silence in the CIC. Not a man moved. The static on the radar scope seemed to mock them, swirling like a blizzard over a fresh grave. The loose was gone. 148 men, vanished. And they had all been listening. Seaman Harris, the plotter, put his grease pencil down, his hand shaking so badly he couldn't write. They were right there, he whispered, looking at the blind sector he had just drawn. Right behind that noise, Rizzo closed his eyes. Every man in this room was a technician. They were the new wizards of a new war, masters of an invisible spectrum, and they had been beaten by a wall of noise. They hadn't failed because their gear was broken. They'd failed because the enemy was smart. The heavy steel hatch to the CIC spun open, and a wave of cool, salt-laced air cut through the stink. The captain walked in. He was a tall man, his face a mask of exhaustion and controlled rage. He didn't speak to the controllers or the plotters. He walked straight to Lieutenant Kaplan. "Report." The word was a piece of shrapnel. Kaplan snapped to attention, his hands stained with solder flux and grease. "Sir, the enemy is using ground-based Mogul jammers on Okinawa. They're broadcasting wide-band noise, high power, blanketing the entire S-band. We're attempting to filter, but their power output it's overwhelming our receivers. We can't find the blips in the clutter." The captain's eyes, gray as the Atlantic, moved to Rizzo's useless scope. "Lieutenant, that is a $40,000 piece of equipment. It is the most advanced air search radar in the world. And right now, my men with $20 binoculars are doing a better job." He pointed to the tactical board, to the red X, where the loose had been. "How many more ships burn before you fix this?" The question was cold, final. It wasn't a request for information. It was an order. "I don't care how you do it, mister. I don't care if you have to rewire the whole ship. Find me those planes, or find me those jammers. I want them off the air. That is your only priority." The captain turned and left. The hatch hissed shut, sealing them back in their steel coffin. Kaplan slumped against the bulkhead, the weight of the loose on his shoulders. Rizzo turned back to the scope. The blizzard was still there. He put his headset back on, but this time he did something strange. He turned the audio gain up, all the way up, until the hiss was a physical pain. "There has to be something in there," he hissed to himself. "No signal, is that perfect?" He closed his eyes. He wasn't watching the noise anymore. He was listening to it. Rizzo was from Brooklyn. He had grown up with the noise of the elevated train, the shouts of vendors on Flatbush Avenue, the rumble of trucks over the bridge. His ears were trained to find signal in chaos. He knew instinctively that no noise was truly random. This static, it felt wrong. It was too uniform, too powerful. "Seaman Harris," Rizzo said, not taking his eyes off the black and white swirl. "What do you hear?" Harris, startled, put on a spare headset and listened. I hear static, Corporal. Just noise. Listen closer," Rizzo commanded. "Don't listen for a plane. Listen to the noise itself." Kaplan, overhearing, walked over, annoyed. "Rizzo, what are you doing? You'll burn out your audio receiver. We're trying to filter that, not embrace it." "With respect, sir," Rizzo said, his gaze locked on the screen. "The filters ain't working, but this noise, it's not the same everywhere." He motioned to the antenna operator. "Sweep the antenna. Port, 10 degrees. Bearing 260, the operator complied. The whine in Rizzo's ears was steady. "Back to 270. The whine, did it get sharper? 280. Yes, it was definitely sharper. "It's louder," Rizzo said, his voice dropping. "The noise, it's loudest at bearing 275. It's like a speaker. You're in front of it, it's loudest. You move to the side, it's still loud, but it ain't the same. This thing is directional. It's pointed at us." Kaplan froze. His MIT-trained mind, a mind of equations and schematics, recoiled. "That's impossible, Corporal. Wideband jamming is, by definition, a floodlight. It's designed to be omnidirectional, to flood the entire spectrum." "No, sir," Rizzo insisted, a new, dangerous confidence in his voice. "A floodlight still has a bulb. It's brightest at the center. They're aiming this thing, and if they're aiming it, it's coming from a source." Kaplan stared at Rizzo. The equations had failed. The filters had failed. The loose was at the bottom of the ocean. What if the operator, the man with the tin ears from Brooklyn, was right? The entire CIC crew was watching them. This was a breach of protocol, a breach of physics as they knew it. A revolutionary, terrifying idea began to form in Kaplan's mind. All their training, from Pearl Harbor to the day they shipped out, was about ignoring the noise. It was clutter, sea return, interference. The goal was to find the tiny, clean echo of a target. They were hunters looking for a reflection. Rizzo was telling them to hunt the spotlight. He was telling them that the static was the target. If it's directional, Kaplan whispered, his mind racing, it has a bearing. If we're getting a peak signal, that's a line. But one line isn't enough. We need a fix. We need triangulation. He grabbed the tactical radio microphone, his hand suddenly steady. He wasn't a failed engineer anymore. He was a hunter. This is Bunker Hill flag plot. Get me the CIC on the Essex. Now, I have an experiment. The call was a hard sell. The CIC officer on the USS Essex was fighting the same battle, and his temper was short. You want us to what, Bunker Hill? You want a bearing on static? We're a little busy trying to filter this junk, not admire it. We have bogies of our own, and we're blind. Listen to me. Kaplan's voice was sharp, cutting through the protocol. This is Lieutenant Kaplan, Task Force 58 Radar Command. This is not a request. I believe the jamming signal is directional. I need a cross bearing. Point your SC2 antenna. Sweep from bearing 240 to 300. Find the point of maximum noise. I don't care about the planes. I care about the noise. Report the bearing. Acknowledge. There was a long pause. The sound of the Essex operator breathing. This was unorthodox. This was career-ending if it was wrong. But the loose was gone. Roger. Bunker Hill, stand by. Sweeping for maximum noise. God help you if this is a ghost, Lieutenant. The CIC on the Bunker Hill became a laboratory. The ship was zigzagging on its patrol course, a standard anti-submarine maneuver. Helm, Kaplan ordered into the ship's intercom. I need a steady course. Steer 090 for 10 minutes. Notify the captain. He couldn't triangulate if his own position was unstable. He was taking command of the ship from the radar room. Okay, Rizzo, Kaplan said, his voice low. Show me. Rizzo directed his antenna operator. Sweep, slow, 1 degree at a time. The antenna motor hummed, a low thrum beneath the deck. Rizzo listened, head cocked, eyes closed. The hiss rose in pitch. Hiss, hiss, hiss. There, stop. Bearing 273. It's screaming at 273. He looked at the scope. Still a blizzard, but to his ears, it was a spike. The tactical radio crackled. Essex to Bunker Hill. You're not going to believe this. We have a peak. It's faint, but it's there. Peak noise at bearing 251. What in God's name are you two doing over there? Kaplan was already at the main plotting table, pushing Seaman Harris aside. He grabbed a maneuvering board and a grease pencil. He marked the Bunker Hill's position. He drew a line, 273 degrees. He marked the Essex's estimated position, 10 miles to the south. He drew a line, 251 degrees. The lines crossed. They crossed deep inside Japanese-held territory, in a shallow valley just north of the Shuri line. We found it, Harris breathed, awestruck. Kaplan and Rizzo looked at each other. They had done it. They had found the ghost in the machine. They rushed the coordinates to flag plot. This was it. The breakthrough. The elation lasted exactly 94 minutes. The captain, desperate for any solution, authorized a patrol of 4 F-4U Corsairs. The pilots, already geared up for a defensive combat air patrol, were diverted. Their mission, a search and destroy on a map coordinate. The pilots were skeptical. Flag plot. This is Lancer Lead, the flight leader's voice crackled. Confirming target. You're sending us to hunt a radio wave? With rockets? There's no visual confirmation? Negative, Lancer Lead, the Bunker Hill's air operations officer replied. Orders from the skipper. Hit this coordinate. CIC guarantees a target. In the CIC, the team listened. The static was still there, but now it felt vulnerable. They were listening to the tactical channel, tracking their own fighters as they flew feet dry over Okinawa. Lancer Lead to flag. We are approaching your magic valley now. The pilot's voice was laced with sarcasm. I'm at Angels 5. I see rocks. I see rice paddies. I see a goat. I do not see a high-powered enemy transmitter. Kaplan gripped the edge of the console. It has to be there. Tell them to look for camouflage, a bunker, an antenna. Lancer lead, Roger. Lancer 2, go low. See if you can kick up any dust. The CIC listened to the sound of the Corsair's engine as the second pilot dove. Negative, lead. Nothing. It's empty. If there's anything here, it's dug in deeper than a tick. The flight leader came back on, his voice final. Flag plot. This is Lancer lead. We've patrolled your coordinate for 20 minutes. There is nothing here. I repeat, negative contact. We are wasting fuel and exposing our aircraft. Returning to base. The flight returned. The pilots were furious. The static on the radar scope seemed to Rizzo to get louder, as if it were laughing. The captain's visit this time was quiet, which was infinitely worse. He stood in the doorway, his face like granite. Lieutenant Kaplan, your experiment cost this fleet 4,000 gallons of aviation fuel, and more importantly, it took our fighter screen off station for an hour and a half. If a raid had come... He didn't finish the sentence. You will cease this noise hunting. You will focus on standard filter procedures. You will follow the doctrine. Am I understood? Yes, sir, Kaplan said, his voice a whisper. The captain left. The defeat was total. Kaplan was a broken man. Rizzo stared at the scope, the noise a physical insult. He was wrong. The loose was still unavenged. The CIC was a morgue. The operators went back to their futile filtering, their morale shattered. Kaplan sat at a small maintenance desk in the corner, staring at his failed calculations, drinking coffee that tasted like battery acid. The Magic Valley failure had broken something in him. His equations, his physics, they had failed. He was just another officer who had gotten men's hopes up, and for nothing. But Rizzo didn't move from his chair. He was on a double shift, then a triple. His eyes were bloodshot. He refused to be wrong. He was still listening. Seaman Harris brought him a coffee. Corporal, maybe you should get some rack time. They're not going to let us try that again. It was there, kid, Rizzo muttered, his voice a low growl. I heard it. It was there. He was scribbling in a logbook, noting the time and the quality of the static. Not just its strength, but its texture. What are you doing? Kaplan asked, his voice dead. Rizzo pointed to the log. Look, sir. At 0200, it's a hum, just a low, steady hiss. At 0400, it becomes a roar, a high-pitched squeal. At 0403, the lookouts call vampire. The raid hits the picket line. At 0430, the raid's over. And at 0435, it's a hum again. It's smart, sir. Kaplan stood up, the fog of his failure beginning to clear. He looked at the log. They're not just on, are they? They're timing it. They're firing it up to full power just before a raid, to provide maximum cover for the inbound planes. That's right, Rizzo said. And our planes, the Corsairs, what time did they get to the valley? Kaplan checked the log. 0510. And what was the noise like at 0510? Rizzo tapped the logbook. It was a hum. They'd powered down. The pilots were looking for a haystack, but the needle had already been moved. Kaplan's mind, his sharp MIT mind, snapped back into focus. They're not just camouflaged, they're intermittent. And he looked at the map, at the failed coordinates. And what if we were wrong? Not about the idea, but about the location. He grabbed his pencil. A high-power S-band signal. It bounces. It creates reflections. The mountains... What if we weren't tracking the source? What if we were tracking a side lobe? An electronic echo bouncing off that ridge? He stared at Rizzo. We weren't wrong, Corporal. We were just imprecise. This was the real mission. The Bunker Hill method, as Kaplan was already calling it in his head, was sound. It just needed refinement. He couldn't go to the captain. He'd been given a direct order to stop, so he bypassed the chain of command. Using a secure, low-power tactical channel, Kaplan contacted the CIC officers on the Essex and the Randolph. He didn't talk to the bridge. He talked to his fellow technicians. This is Kaplan on the Bunker Hill. The Magic Valley was a bust. But I know why. We were tracking a reflection. I need a 3-point fix. I need a true baseline. I know we can do this. There was a long silence. This was conspiracy. Kaplan, the Randolph's officer replied. "We're all getting chewed out for this noise. If the skipper finds out I'm hunting static..." "And if we find it?" Kaplan countered. "If we stop this? They're not going to court-martial a hero. We do this now. My operator has a pattern. The Mogul will go to full power in 10 minutes. I need your bearings, but this time, we do it right." He designed the new method on the fly. "Do not sweep," he ordered. "Hold your antenna on bearing 240. When I give the word, sweep 1 degree every 5 seconds. Log the exact time and bearing of peak signal. We're going to map this thing's brain." It was an electronic ballet. Miles apart, 3 multi-ton radar arrays, the nerve centers of 3 capital ships, all began to turn in perfect, slow synchronicity. In the Bunker Hill's CIC, the air was so thick you could cut it. "Now," Rizzo whispered. The Mogul fired up. The familiar, hateful shriek flooded the room. "The roar is on," Rizzo called. "Begin sweep." "Sweeping," the antenna operator confirmed. Rizzo listened, his entire body rigid. Peak at 271. "Mark," the radio crackled. "Essex reports peak at 250. Randolph reports peak at 244. Kaplan was at the plotting table, his hands flying. 3 ships, 3 bearings. He drew the lines. They didn't just cross. They didn't form a magic valley. They formed a perfect, tiny triangle, no more than 500 yards wide. The previous location was miles off. This was the source. Kaplan checked the coordinates against a new set of reconnaissance photos. And there, on the slope of a hill designated Hill 187, he saw it. A tiny, almost invisible wire strung between 2 trees. The antenna. "Gotcha," Kaplan breathed. "You son of a bitch, we gotcha." This time, they didn't run to the bridge. Kaplan and Rizzo spent an hour compiling the evidence. The logbook showing the enemy's broadcast pattern, the chart with the 3-line, irrefutable geometric fix, the reconnaissance photo with the tiny circled wire antenna. They were building a legal case. Then they walked into flag plot. The captain was in a meeting with the task force admiral's staff. He looked up, his eyes cold. "Lieutenant, I believe I gave you a direct order." "You did, sir," Kaplan said, his voice shaking but firm. "And I respectfully request you relieve me of duty after you see this." He didn't wait for permission. He laid the chart on the main table. "Sir, the first run failed because we were tracking a signal reflection, a side lobe. The enemy is also intermittent. They were powered down when our planes arrived." He pointed to the chart. This is not a guess. This is geometry. 3 bearings from 3 ships, all taken within 30 seconds of each other, all pinpointing the same 500-yard square. We have located the transmitter." He slid the photo over. "And this, sir, is its antenna. Hill 187. The admiral's staff looked at the captain. The captain stared at the map. He looked at Rizzo. "And you, Corporal, you're still convinced you can hear this thing?" "Sir," Rizzo said, his Brooklyn accent cutting the tension. "I can hear it breathing. It's on right now, pulsing low. In about 20 minutes, based on their pattern for the last 3 days, it's going to scream. And when it does, the Kamikazes are coming." The captain stared at the chart for a full minute. He was betting his career. He was betting the fleet. He picked up the intercom. "Air operations. Scramble Lancer flight. And this time, tell them to skip the rockets. I want bombs. 500-pounders. Tell them they are not hitting a target. They are hitting a coordinate. I want that hillside erased." He put the phone down and looked at Kaplan. "One more thing, Lieutenant. I want a second flight. Hellcats. Get them to the 30-mile perimeter. The moment that static dies, I want them ready." The raid was coming. And this time, the Bunker Hill was setting the trap. The CIC was running 2 operations at once. The first was offensive, guiding the 4 Corsairs of Lancer flight to Hill 187. The second was defensive, bracing for the inevitable raid. Right on schedule, as predicted by Rizzo's logbook, the static roared to life. The signal strength meter Kaplan had jury-rigged slammed into the red. "It's full power, sir," Rizzo yelled over the noise. "This is it." And at the exact same moment, the bridge speaker crackled. "Vampires, multiple bandits, multiple bogies, Bearing 270. The raid is on. The Japanese had timed it perfectly, but this time, so had the Americans. The Corsairs were already 5 minutes from the target. They were flying into the teeth of the enemy's electronic shield, guided only by Kaplan's voice. Lancer lead. This is Bunker Hill CIC. You are 5 miles from target. No joy. Repeat, no joy. Just jungle. Kaplan gripped the radio mic, his knuckles white. Lancer lead. This is Kaplan. Trust the numbers. The target is not visible. It is dug in. You are authorized to drop ordnance on coordinate. Do not wait for visual confirmation. Drop on the numbers. The CIC listened to the open channel. They could hear the pilots breathing, the rumble of their engines. Roger, Bunker Hill. We are feet dry. Coming up on the valley now. A pause. Wait one. I see it. It's that wire. I see the wire. Lancer 2, 3, 4. Follow me. We're going in. The radio exploded in shouts. Bombs away. Target obscured by smoke. Pull up. Second pass using cannon. Hitting the base of the antenna array. In the CIC, Rizzo and Kaplan stared at the radar scope. The blizzard of static was thick as ever. The operators were frantically trying to get a count on the real raid, the Kamikazes, but they were blind. It didn't work, Seaman Harris whispered. They missed. Wait, Rizzo said. He was listening, his eyes shut. The pitch of the whine was changing. It was gargling. It was wavering, like a bad radio station. The signal was unstable. They hit it, Rizzo whispered. They hit the antenna. Then, as if a giant power cable had been severed, the static popped. The sound vanished. The silence was a physical shock. For a full, terrifying second, the CIC was plunged into an electronic void. The radar scope went black, the swirling snow gone. The roar that had been the soundtrack of their lives for a week had simply ceased. The operators, frozen in disbelief, stared at their blank screens. And then, the next sweep of the radar antenna painted the sky. It wasn't snow, it was blips. Tiny, sharp, perfect points of light, dozens of them. A swarm. The entire Kamikaze raid, laid bare, 24 miles out and closing fast. They had been hiding right behind the static, using the noise as their cover. Now, they were naked. My God, the captain breathed, his voice on the command channel, deadly calm. Target-rich environment. All batteries. Commence firing. Vector, all fighters. Vector, all fighters! The CIC exploded. It wasn't panic. It was a release of a week's worth of pent-up fury. It was controlled, professional chaos. The fog of war had been lifted, replaced by crystal, mathematical clarity. New target, Rizzo was calling out, his voice clear and steady. Bearing 275, Angels 10. Range 15 miles. Plotting 4? No. 5 bandits in that group. Harris, the young plotter, was tracking targets so fast, his grease pencil was smoking. He wasn't a scared kid anymore. He was a veteran. The tactical net, which had been a cacophony of fear, was now a symphony of destruction. Hellcat lead. Vector 080, Angels 12. Multiple bandits your sector. The Hellcat leader's voice came back, laced with glee. Tally-ho, I've got 'em. They're naked. Lads, it's a turkey shoot. On the ship, the 5-inch guns slammed, and the Bofor's 40mm cannons opened up, their thump, 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 vibrating the very air. The CIC was getting splash reports every few seconds. Splash 1 bandit. Splash 2. The Hellcat's got him. Target bearing 271. He's in the flak. He's Splash 3. Not a single kamikaze from that wave touched an American ship. Only 2 even made it through the fighter screen, and they were torn to shreds by the combined radar-directed fire of the destroyer pickets. The Mogul was dead. The screen was clear. The aftermath was almost as loud as the battle. The CIC was flooded with calls from other ships in the task force. Enterprise CIC to Bunker Hill. What in God's name did you do? Our scopes are clean. Randolph CIC. We saw it. We saw the whole thing. You magnificent bastards, you did it. The noise hunters had drawn first blood. That evening, the captain came down to the CIC. The room was quiet, the operators methodically scanning a sky that was, for the first time in weeks, completely clear. He didn't make a speech. He just walked over to where Kaplan and Rizzo were reviewing the mission logs. He looked at the lieutenant. "Lieutenant Kaplan, your report on this method will be on the Admiral's desk by Aero 800. It is now fleet doctrine." He then turned to Rizzo. The corporal snapped to attention. The captain just looked at him, a small, almost invisible smile on his tired face. He put a hand on Rizzo's shoulder. "Good work, Corporal. Your ears are now government property." That was all. But it was everything. The Bunker Hill method was disseminated to the entire Pacific Fleet. It became the standard operating procedure for a new kind of war. Kaplan and Rizzo weren't just radar men anymore. They were pioneers. They trained operators on other ships, teaching them to listen to the fingerprints of different jammers, to track the mobile units, to predict the raids based on the quality of the noise. The impact was immediate and staggering. Declassified post-war reports showed the statistics. Before the noise hunters, fleet radar effectiveness against jamming shielded raids off Okinawa was estimated at a terrifying 30%. Kamikazes were getting through at an unsustainable rate. After Kaplan and Rizzo's discovery and the subsequent destruction of the main Mogul sites, fleet radar effectiveness against the Kamikaze screen jumped to over 85%. The surprise attacks stopped. This tactic, born of desperation in a smoke-filled room, had a legacy that stretched far beyond Okinawa. It was the birth of modern electronic warfare, not as a defensive measure, but as an offensive weapon. It was the suppression of enemy air defenses. It was the idea that any signal, any broadcast, any noise the enemy made was a vulnerability. It was a weapon waiting to be turned against them. All it took was one man listening to the static and another who believed him.